What's up, friends? It's Haley, aka Bird,
and Randy,
and you're tuning in to the Give 'em the Bird podcast.
This podcast is all about challenging what it means to be healthy and fit. It's about celebrating sustainable behavior change and non-scale victories.
And most importantly, it's about giving the bird to the diet industry and societal expectations of body size. Why? Well, because at the end of the day, you have an entire life to live that does not require your body look a certain way.
Thanks for tuning in.
Now, let's give 'em the bird.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to GTB. This week, Haley and I are going to chat about some suggestions we have for getting out of a movement funk. And this was somewhat inspired by my own current movement funk, which I'm slowly getting back out of. And it just got us chatting through text and stuff about, how to get yourself out of one. And we thought it would be a good topic to bring to the podcast.
Yes.
So yeah, Haley, I know you've mentioned you've been in funks before. I'm kind of currently in one. What's your experience been with movement funks, and what are some of your first tips to get yourself out?
Yeah, lots of times I've been in these. And I always feel like I see on social media people saying coaches who will post just because I'm a fitness coach or a personal trainer, doesn't mean that I'm always motivated, things like that. And I mean, I feel like anybody that knows me knows that I would never even try to fake it till I make it with that. Absolutely not. But I think it's important to note, even people who are coaches and who coach people through movement funks and coach them to improve their motivation and set goals and all these things, I get in so many movement funks, and I think it totally serves as a chance to just check in. What got me here? Was it something big and obvious that happened? I don't know, changing a job, or a relationship thing, or, a death in the family, something big and obvious like that. And if so, then, hopefully that doesn't happen very often, so you don't have to super duper plan for it in the future. But if it was something as simple as I caught a cold, little things like that, and then I just didn't get back into it, I think that movement funks can just serve as a really great time to pause, check in, reflect on what got me here, and then maybe I can strategize a little bit for the future to prevent it from happening. So I look at it as an opportunity. I say that from a coaching perspective, but when I'm dealing with it by on my own, I'm this sucks.
Yeah.
What opportunity? I'm terrible about reflecting, but yeah, so lots of personal experience and some coaching experience.
There's some shame around being in a movement funk too. I shouldn't be feeling this way, but it's normal, right? To get in funks like that. I know when I was going to a gym every day, no questions asked, every day I was there, that's when I didn't have a super healthy relationship with food and movement. So, now that I have a healthier relationship, I feel I'm just more in tune with I do not feel like doing this today.
Yes.
And, sometimes I let myself, I kind of give into that and let myself be, take a rest day or whatever, or rest couple of weeks.
Rest month.
And sometimes I, work my way out of it, and I just, I guess, try to honor how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And to add to some of those little things that might get you into a funk, for me, I've noticed most of the time, it's just when I'm feeling overwhelmed with work or home life. For whatever reason, going to the gym or working out, movement of any kind is just the first thing to go, because I just can't even get myself to plan for it or think of it.
Right.
But when I get my shit together, then I feel I'm gonna go to the gym on top of this. I'm gonna kick ass. So, I'm sure it's different for everybody, but that's what makes me feel ready to move. Is when I just have my life together a little bit.
I can relate to that too. I feel what causes me to get into a movement funk is totally when I'm overwhelmed at work. Because at my job, we do a lot of odd hours not
Mm-hmm.
always a lot, but like I'll lead programs in the evening, or like if students need to meet with me in the evenings or things like that. And then if my plan was to like work out after work, or if my plan was to work out in the morning, but if I'm up late like working, it just gets me off. Not to mention, then I just feel like a stress cadet because I'm not only like seeing my typical amount of appointments, but then I have all these like outreach events and things like that on top of it that I have to plan for. So it's just like, so overwhelmed and anxious.
Right.
So I would agree that definitely is what causes me to get into like a rut. And I like that you say that it's one of the first things to go, because isn't that freaking what we do? Like, I feel like, especially as women, like our
Mhm.
or moms or wives or whatever it is, like our self-care or like me time is the first thing to go.
Yep.
And I mean, I even find this with students that I work with. It's like they will, I don't want to say let themselves down, because it's like taking a day off or a week off or whatever. It's not about letting yourself down, but it's like I will not prioritize myself, because if I don't go to the gym, it doesn't hurt anybody but me,
Right.
you know, versus if I cut back my hours at work, or if I say no to, going out to eat or whatever. Like we always just put ourselves on the back burner.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, I can totally relate to that. When I'm overwhelmed, when I got a lot of shit going on, I'm like, absolutely not happening. But then when things are in order, that's when I'm like, I think I might like go get a lift in over my lunch break. Like, who is she? You
Yeah.
know?
Yep.
So that's a really good point, that it ebbs and flows a lot with work and just overwhelm in general.
Yep. Yep.
Hmm.
And like, so coming out of a long movement funk in my case,
Hmm.
how do you recommend that people re-enter the movement
Yeah.
stratosphere, whatever you want to
The movement stratosphere. Oh my gosh, that could be a really cool like program name, like the stratosphere.
Yes.
I
I
love
wanted to
it.
say gym, but I was like, not everybody goes to the gym for
Right,
movement. So
right.
like getting back into regular movement. Like
Yeah.
what do you recommend to people so that they don't feel like overwhelmed or let down by their ability to like not lift as heavy as they could before or not
Yeah.
walk as far?
Right. Yeah, I think the first thing is I say drop the judgments. Like,
Mhm.
and I think that's don't judge yourself for getting in the movement funk in the first place, right? Like
Yes.
shit
Right.
happens, you know? And then don't expect yourself to perform at the same level that you were at before. So like release your expectations. And I think this can be like for exercise, but also for like a lot of other shit too, like
Right.
I can't expect myself to function at the same level because life is different now. Um,
Mhm.
and when it comes to exercise, I think that it's really relying heavily on what sounds good to me right now. Like, for example, with us, when we were, when I and you are back in the groove, I think, of going to Versa regularly,
Uh-huh.
there were some days where I was like, okay, the workout at Versa sounds good, but the only time I can go is in the morning, and like a morning workout does not sound good to me right now.
Hmm.
So I'm not gonna just expect myself to like start getting back up an hour and a half earlier than I have been for the last month or whatever. Instead, I'm just gonna try to do a little lift over my lunch break, or like, when I get home from work or something like that. So I think like releasing our expectations about what type of movement we're doing, how
Hmm.
long it has to be, the intensity, and literally just asking ourselves, like, what sounds good right now?
Yep.
Like, and that could be a walk, that could be playing dodgeball with your kids, that could be maybe it is lifting, maybe it's like doing a Zumba workout in your living room, or some yoga or some stretching, but just release the freaking expectations. And I think when we can release the expectations, that kind of allows those judgments to drop too, because it's like,
Right.
where I'm at today is different than where I was a week ago or 2 weeks ago or a month ago or 3 months ago, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
I think that's like a really big thing, is to just kind of go into it with a clear head and an open mind.
For sure. So last week was my first week back at the gym, and I went 3 times a week, which actually was more than I expected. It just was feeling good. And so I just kept doing it.
Brandy.
Um, but I did grab, air quotes baby weights
Mm-hmm.
compared to what I would have used when I was there before, because I knew that if I grabbed the weights I had before, I would be mad at myself because I
Mm.
wasn't doing all of the reps, and I would feel miserable. Like my muscles would be so stinking sore. So I was really glad I did because I was able to do everything. It was still a challenge. I was still plenty sore.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't let myself like be tied to a certain weight that I thought I should be able to use.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. And I even think of
Uh-huh.
it because we can like getting back into movement. It's like a celebratory thing. Like, oh my God, I'm doing it. Like, I'm proud of myself
Mhm.
for actually getting here and doing it, you know? And then the moment we grab the same weight or expect ourselves to do the same thing and we can't, it just completely washes that like down the drain.
Yes.
It's like
Yep.
we lose all the positivity and like the celebratory self stuff because it's overshadowed by this. Oh my God, I've been gone for so long. I can't use the 20-pound dumbbell anymore. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, whoa. Not to mention the fact that, like, it's probably not because we've lost a shit ton of strength. I mean, depending upon how long, a
Sure.
duration our break was, but it could be because, again, depending upon the situation that got us in the funk, maybe it was higher stress levels, or maybe we haven't been eating consistently or sleeping well, and all of those things impact our strength and our performance. Even if it was just like a 2-week time span, I promise you, you didn't lose your muscular strength. It was probably just all these other variables that impact our performance. But again, if we don't think about that in the moment, and so if we can
Mhm.
almost like go in with the expectation of doing less and
Right.
then surprise ourselves, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, I think that's a great idea, Randy. I'm proud of you for doing that. What made you think
Yeah.
to do that? Like, were you just
Well,
like, I'm just gonna do this, or did you think through it before?
I think I don't know if it was like a structured thought process necessarily, but I've just been in that position before where I went for the other weights and I was discouraged
Hmm.
and I was like, well, why did I even come back? Like I can't even do, and so and I just have kind of dropped the ego a little bit, I think, over I never like had a big old gym ego, but um
Hmm.
I used to lift pretty heavy and do some pretty intense things. And just over time, I've not tied myself to that as much. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm lifting versus what he or she is lifting. Like, I'm just gonna friggin' do what feels good. So,
Ooh, and
yeah.
I mean, that could be a podcast episode in and of itself, like dropping the ego,
Yeah.
and listening to yourself, and that idea of like, I'm still here, I'm still working out, and I'm still showing up. I can still be
Mhm.
proud of this, even though that person's lifting heavier. Like, yeah, I think that's really important. So you dropped your ego and your
Yeah.
expectations, motherfucker.
That's right. I dropped all the shit.
I just and then I dropped the weights because I was done. No. Now the
Because my arms were
mic.
spent.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love that. One thing too I think about is when you ask yourself like what sounds good or what sounds enjoyable or what sounds fun, I think one thing that can be really, really helpful, because sometimes in the moment, nothing sounds good. Like,
Right.
it's just like exercise, fitness, physical activity. Like, I don't want to do that right now. And I can think of it especially in terms of like mental health wise, when like I'm going through a struggle. It's like, ugh, I know that it would make me feel better, but just nothing sounds freaking good. One thing
Mhm.
that I do sometimes with students is I'll encourage them to come up with like a list of movement ideas, and then they can refer back to it. So that when they're in the funk and they're trying to get out of it, they don't have to try to generate all these ideas either. And
Yes. Yeah, I like that.
so it's like all the things that I have options to do, put them on this list and take the thinking out of it. I think that, and again, this can be for a variety of different health behaviors or whatever too, but I think with movement, it's like take the guesswork out of it, and I'm just going to open my phone, look at the list and pick one from there, you
Yep.
know?
That kind of reminds me of those workouts that they do with like the deck of cards.
Oh
Every suit
yeah.
is like a thing. And then, because then you don't have to think about anything. You draw a card,
Yes.
it tells you what to do. And I think, yeah, that would make it a lot easier for me. I know for sure if I don't have to put a single freaking thought into it, I just show up and do it.
Yeah, I
And
love
you can
that.
do that
And
at home. You don't have to go to a gym for somebody to tell you what to do.
yeah, and I think that almost makes it more fun. I know a couple episodes ago when we were talking about like how to make our workouts less like body centric, I think
Yep.
I shared the idea that my sister Leslie came up with. I think it was like during COVID, where I'm laughing because when we talked about like the different structures of a song, we were like
Yeah.
the chorus, the bridge, the refrain, like we have no
The
freaking
hook.
clue. The hook, yeah, the intro, the outro. But I remember when we were talking about that and how this idea of pairing just two exercises and like on the chorus doing one of them and the rest of the song doing the other one, like it reminds me of that deck of cards kind of thing
Yeah.
too. So making it fun, even if it's like rolling a dice and if I hit an even number, I'm going to do an upper body exercise. Or
Yep.
I know one time I've done, I set the timer in our gym for 20 minutes and each minute I did a different exercise and it was just like whatever I thought of to do. So I did
Yeah.
things all the way from like a barbell back squat to like mountain climbers, right? And it was just whatever popped into my head. And it's like the goal is just to move. I don't really give a shit what kind of movement I'm doing, as long as it's
Yep.
not hurting me, right? So yeah, I love that idea of like kind of almost like gamifying it, like making it more fun that way.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep, for sure. Um, and I'm going to backtrack for just a moment
Yeah.
because I really like what you said about dropping expectations, not just for like what you do in the gym, but for yourself getting back into it in terms of like frequency and like time of day and all that stuff. Like you're not going to revert back to your old habits. And so I feel like so this week this happened to me. Last week went 3 times a week to the gym, all the early mornings, and then Tuesday rolls around this week and I set my alarm to go and I got up, brought my clothes into the bathroom to change, and I was just like, I'm gonna fall asleep on the way to the gym. I just cannot. I
This is
can't
not
do this
safe.
today. Right. And I felt kind of guilty, but I went back to bed and I like slept hard for like an hour and I woke up and I was like, I needed that. It was just not the day for me.
Mm,
Um, so it was just yesterday, the same day, I was at work and I was at work. I was at my husband's business where I do the books.
yeah.
And there was a knock on the door and it was UPS and all of everybody else had gone home. And he's like, I have a delivery. And I was like, cool, like just bring it in. He's like, no, it's like the full truck. And I was like, oh my God. So I had to open up the dock door and he had probably 50 heavy ass boxes and I had to help him unload them. And thankfully, Gerald came in at some point and relieved me, but I helped with several of them, getting them unloaded and like stacked. And I was sweating at the end. And I was like, dang, like I just got like an exercise, like a movement in anyway, even though it wasn't
Right.
like a traditional, you know, dedicated, planned movement. I still like
Yes.
got something out of it. So,
I also am just, I would love to have been in that UPS driver's head when like you were the one that was like, yes, I can help you. Like, not that you're not so strong and capable, but
I
like
know,
just this small, tiny human, like adorable
right?
little thing, like, yeah, let's do this. Like, I just
Meet me
wish
at
I
the
could,
dock door out back.
yeah, yeah. Like, are you bringing someone? No, I am the someone. Like,
I
it's
am the
me.
someone.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, he
I
commented,
love
he's like,
that.
you were probably having a great day until I showed up. I was like,
And you're
well,
like,
it's fine. We can
we
handle
won't
it."
talk about it. Yeah. Um, that is so true though. And I think what I love about that is I always try to tell people like even dropping the term exercise or physical activity and just saying movement, like we do that a
Yes. Yeah.
lot. Because when I think about exercise, I think about like, that structured traditional idea, weightlifting, running, taking a class, like even like Zoom, but like some of those things come into my head, like very clear
Hmm.
exercise, right? But when we say movement, I mean, movement can be anything, right? Like
Real.
literally anything, helping move in boxes, right? The UPS boxes, or rearranging your living room. Or again, like I even think movement feels more like playing in the yard with my dogs, or like, whatever it might be. It just opens up the door to so many more possibilities when we drop even just the word choice that we use.
Yep.
And I know like you made a note on here too that again, this idea, it doesn't have to be like traditional. It doesn't have to be this structured form of exercise. It can just be movement, and anything counts. So I really think that's a big thing too.
Yep, for sure.
Love it. Another thing that I think can be helpful, um, and I think this is really important for maintaining a healthy relationship with movement, is I think I first learned it in season one. I refer back to this episode all the time. Episode number 13 with Stephanie Roth Goldberg. I freaking love her. She's on Instagram. I mean, if you listen to the podcast, you freaking probably know who she is on Instagram because I refer to her all the time. But on Instagram, at embodied psychotherapist, and I will never stop loving her. But she gave me this idea of, I don't remember exactly what she called it. I always catch myself calling it like a 5-minute rule, but I'm like, I try to drop the word rule because,
Sure.
intuitive eating. So like a 5-minute guide or whatever, 5-minute activity where you essentially give yourself like, I'm just going to do this thing for 5 minutes. So there's a little bit of like willing ourselves, and I don't like to say forcing, but like, I don't feel like doing this. I'm just going to put on the Zumba video, or I'm just going to start, like cleaning my house, whatever your movement of choice is. I'm just going to give myself 5 minutes. If at the end of those 5 minutes, like I don't want to be doing it anymore, like I can stop, totally
Yep.
stop. But a lot of times what we find is like once we're 5 minutes in, it's like, meh, this isn't so bad. Like I'm feeling a little bit better kind of thing. And so
Yep.
you can apply that to these non-traditional forms of movement, but you can also apply it to, like I did it when I was training for the half marathon. It was like, I don't feel like doing this. However, I know, like I thought back to my motivation of like, well, I'm going to be running a half marathon, so I do need to train. I also know that I do feel a lot better after I move, right? So I just gave myself 5 minutes. And
Yep.
half the time, what turns out is when I would look at my watch, like I'd be 12 minutes in, or whatever, which running for 12 minutes now just seems like, what? I can't even imagine that.
How did you ever do that?
Yeah, you know, but yeah, just literally, and again, dropping the expectations, like 5 minutes. I'm just gonna give myself 5 minutes, and if at the end of that 5-minute timer, I'm done, I'm done. Like that's it. I got 5 minutes of movement and cool. I think I freaking love that. And I use that with students and myself all the goddamn time, all the time.
Yes. Well, I love how you refer to like what your motivation is, because I think that's a big factor in how I guess I don't know how to say it in a concise way, but what I'm thinking in my mind is that when I was moving for body change, there's a more tangible result. You see, like, you see your body changing when you're moving, with the intent of losing weight or making yourself a different size or whatever.
Right.
Whereas when you drop that and you're moving just for overall health or mental health, it's not as visible of a change necessarily, or it certainly doesn't come as quickly. And so I
Right.
think it's harder to keep that motivation going. At least for me, if it's just for my overall health so that I can live to be, 90 instead of 75, like that's not affecting me today. And
Right.
so, yeah, so that I think is something. And so what made me think of that is, I remember your Instagram story when you said, I don't want to run today, but I have a goal. And if I want to meet that goal, I should consider doing this. And I'll check in
Yes.
with myself after 5 minutes. And so that's what has kind of been at the forefront of my mind lately is like, my goal is just to be overall a healthier person.
Yes.
Not to change my body size, but just to be a healthier person. And I know that I feel so much better physically and mentally when I'm moving regularly. And I just kept waiting for that motivation to come on its own. And certainly thinking about my overall health helped a little bit. But again, I think sometimes you just have to know that you're going to have to push yourself a little bit. The motivation isn't just going to show up on your doorstep one day.
Yes.
So, I told myself for 1 week, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, even if I hate it, just to see if that kick starts me.
Yes.
And if it doesn't, fine. If it does, then great. And I feel after going 3 times a week that I wanted to go back this week. So yeah, sometimes you just have to start to then get the motivation to follow.
Yeah, I agree. And I like that. I think there's a complete, it's completely different to again, softly using the term force, right? Like
Right.
it's completely different to kind of will ourselves or, force the movement a little bit when we're reminding ourselves that this is for my mental well-being, this is for my overall health, compared to this is for the weight loss, this is for a body change in size. Like I just feel like it's totally different. And when I think about like if I was meeting with two people and both of them said, yeah, last week I kind of had to force myself to exercise. And one of them said, but I know that if I did it, I was going to feel better mentally. And the other one said, because I had, this weight loss goal in mind, one of those feels healthy to me, one of them feels unhealthy. So I think like that intention behind it and the motivation is huge. And one thing I incorporate with like my intuitive eating and intuitive movement like outreaches that I do with students is we talk about the importance of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators, right? And
Mhm.
extrinsic motivation a lot of times is body size changes, right? Or um, I mean, that's the most prevalent one. It could also be things I have on the slide, um, money or rewards, and students are always like, "I'm sorry, what?" I'm like, "Okay, I used to work at a gym where you got like a transformation challenge and you were awarded
Yep.
if you lost the most weight, right?" And they're like, "Oh,
Yep.
wow." I'm like,
And some workplaces do that still, like the person
"Mhm,
to lose the most the team to lose the most percentage body fat gets
yeah."
XYZ. Yeah.
So extrinsic motivators, right?
Yep.
And then the intrinsic, all these other like feel good things.
Mhm.
And what I find is like a lot of times extrinsic motivators, like our body size changes, or even like that reward at the end of the 3 months, that takes time to earn, right? Like it takes time to see changes, etc. And versus the intrinsic motivators, we can see those after one movement session. We can
Mhm.
see that like my mood is boosted, I feel better, I might sleep better, my body feels better, right? Like we can notice those a lot quicker. So what I always tell students is like the extrinsic motivators might get you going because as a society we place so much emphasis in body size changes, but the intrinsic motivators are going to be what keep you going and what keep you coming back. Because if we just
Mhm.
hang on for dear life to see the size and shape of our body change or the scale change, we might be waiting for a long time, for a lot of people, like depending upon the route that they're taking, even if they are taking a quote unquote healthier approach to it, it'll take some time, right? And so I love that focus on the intrinsic motivators, the feel good things.
Mhm.
And that's something that, again, anytime we're talking about exercise, like focus on the feel good benefits, not the look good benefits. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that big distinction there.
Yep. And it's so true. Like after just one day, you can feel those things. I know when, I started last week, I'd felt like a blob for several weeks. And then the first time I went to the gym, I was like, I feel like a new woman today. Like
Yes. Yeah.
just
That
lifts you
reminds
up.
me, that reminds me, this student, totally off topic. I might end up editing this out. I don't know. But this student that I met with, it was before spring break, and I was like, "So, what are you doing over spring break?" And she goes, "Nothing. I just want to sit on my couch and rot." And I was like, "Oh my God. How freaking
Honestly,
how
that's where I
funny is
was for a
that?
while. So
How
I
funny
get
is that?" I was like,
it.
"I love that for you. Like,
I
don't
love
do
the
it." Right?
honesty.
Like, and the way she said, like, "I just want to rot." Oh my God. Anywho, that just made me think of it when you said I felt like a blob. Not related to exercise at all, but
I love it.
yeah. And then another thing that I thought of that I think can help kind of boost our motivation is if it's accessible for you, getting like a new pair of workout pants, a new top, like new gym shoes, anything like that. Like, again, not realistic for everybody, but even sometimes for me, like taking an old baggy t-shirt that I have and cutting it into a crop top, I'm
Yes.
like I want to wear, I don't know, it does something to me. So thinking
Yep.
about those sort of things too can kind of, again, motivate us or get us a little bit more excited about going back to the gym or moving a little bit more, whatever it is.
Yep. Anything that involves shopping, I'm here for. So
Yeah. Randy,
sign
you
me up.
talk about your shopping addiction, like, right, girl,
Every episode.
do we need
I
to
know.
have somebody on?
Maybe. Yes, please.
We
Let's
won't
find
record
somebody.
it. That's funny.
I might start crying.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah.
And
Anything
well,
else
and
that you
it's
can think
also,
of? Yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna say the only other thing that I came to mind for me was just going with a friend, like going on a walk
Yeah,
with a friend, or taking your kids out to play in the yard together, or going to the gym with a friend, or whatever it is. I always find it more enjoyable. One, it's
mhm.
accountability, not that, we need to, that would be an external or an extrinsic motivator, but a soft accountability.
Yeah,
Erica Olaf, who we had on the podcast, we hold each other semi accountable. Like we say we're gonna go together, but if one of us doesn't show up, it's not a thing, it's
where
just
were you?
right, right. It's just like knowing that the other person is probably gonna be there makes us want to go more.
Totally.
Um, and yeah, I just have more fun when I'm working out with people that are my friends.
Oh
So
my
if that
gosh. Yeah.
motivates you, then do that.
Yeah, I love that. And thinking of, again, when we think about ways that we can make movement more enjoyable, yeah, the movement itself, like what form of movement or like what time of day, etc. But also, I think we talked about this maybe a little bit on the ways to make exercise less body centric or like working out less body centric. But just like, how can you manipulate the movement to be more enjoyable? Is it the
Mhm.
music? Is it watching Netflix while you do it in your living room instead of like at a gym? Or yeah, is it like I miss working out solely because I miss seeing you, Erica,
Right.
Carolyn in person. Like
Mhm.
and even like Nick too, and like the other coaches and everything.
Yep.
So yeah, I love that. The account like the gentle or like soft accountability or just this idea of like I like these people and I want to see you more. And
Right.
if I tell you again, it's almost like if I tell you I'm going to go, then if I don't go, it's kind of like, oh shoot, I told Randy I was going to go. Like I don't want to let her down, even though I
Right.
wouldn't be letting, like
Right.
yes. Hmm.
Yes, it's just kind of a little mental thing. And like you said, like I'm not going to get hurt if I go. I know I'm going to feel better if I go. So having
Yes.
some accountability in that sense, I don't think is a bad thing because
No.
again, it's more tied to the intrinsic, really, when you get down
Right.
to it.
I think so too.
Yeah,
And just because you go doesn't mean that you have to do all the things. Like again, I think
exactly.
literally the last workout I did at Versa, I remember we were rowing and I was literally just like my damper was all the way down at like one. I was just like fucking moving. Like I
Going
was
through the
going through
motions.
the gosh darn motions. So you can show up and like be there and try to get back on track and you can still just stretch in the corner or do something
Yeah,
very
you're
minimal.
still going to
So
get something out of it.
yeah,
So.
I love that. Oh,
Um, one thing I actually didn't have on my like radar until we started talking about it a little more was because you mentioned Netflix. I was talking with my sister about this topic actually. And she said sometimes what she'll do is like she'll pick a good show or an audiobook or a podcast that she really wants to listen to, and she won't allow herself to listen to it unless she's moving.
oh,
So she just, it gives herself a little bit of extrinsic motivation,
that's
but
okay.
a healthy dose.
Yeah. Hmm.
So,
I like that. I
mhm.
do that very frequently. I have two 15-pound weights and like some resistance bands in my living room. And when I think that's been like my strength workouts more recently when I haven't been doing like really any strength workouts is
Mhm.
I'll put on like a Netflix show, like the show You.
Yeah.
Already,
Oh, yes.
worked through the most recent season. And I literally will just choose like 4 or 5 exercises. I don't know how many reps I'm doing. I don't know how much rest time I'm taking, but it's
Right.
like I'm just moving. I'm not very connected to my body, no, but you know what? I'm doing it and I'm
Mhm.
watching the show and that's it. So I
Yep.
like that recommendation. That's a good strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't necessarily have to tie yourself to the I can only watch it when I'm moving, but
Right.
if it makes your movement more enjoyable, then
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
I like it.
So,
That's a good idea. Cool. Anything else that you can think of?
oh, I think that's everything that kind of came to mind for me. I'm sure there's more suggestions though. So if anybody has anything, let us know. We would love to
Hmm.
hear some new innovative ways to kind of get out of a movement funk.
Out of a movement funk. Also, the word funk, I feel like I've looked at it so many times. Now it's like looking like, do you spell it with an F or do you spell it with a PH? Like, when that happens, like
Oh,
it's an F.
I that's a I mean, the between movement funk and movement funk with a PH and movement stratosphere, I feel like we have
Oh,
like a good band name brewing
yeah,
or like
album dropping
something.
soon.
Something has got to come from this.
Stratosphere. I love this. We have to create something with stratosphere now. I freaking love that. Oh, that's so funny. Well, yeah, if anybody has any additional suggestions, feel free to reach out to us. If you're listening on Spotify, I'll incorporate like a Q&A so you can actually submit your answers to your tips to get you out of a movement funk, which is a really cool feature I've been trying to use more when we upload onto
That's
Spotify.
cool.
I know the platform that I do the podcast on, it is now called Spotify for Podcasters. And so, yeah, it's pretty cool. So they
Super
have like
cool.
some neat features. So yeah, feel free if you're listening on Spotify, you can submit your ideas there, or you can DM us, or I don't know why I just always want to say carrier pigeon, like so stupid, but it's so dumb. Yeah, I don't know. But anywho, we will hopefully see you back here next week, keeping in mind that I'm about to pop a baby out any day now. So
Literally any day now.
literally, actually, by the time this airs, who knows? Maybe baby M will be with
That's
us. But we still plan to keep the episodes rolling for my own sanity. So yeah, we'll see you back here in another week, and reach out if you have anything for us. Thanks for tuning in to the Give 'em the Bird podcast. If you're enjoying the podcast, head on over to Apple iTunes or Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Give 'em the Bird podcast to stay up to date with all things GTB. We'll see you back here next week for another episode, but in the meantime, go give 'em the bird.